Going in for an interview is always a difficult process. The stress of meeting with a panel of people who will determine whether you get the job and lobbing question after question towards you. Sometimes you may even realize that the interview is not going well in the middle of it. But what can you do when this happens? And how can you get the hiring process back on track for yourself? This is Lifeline. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lifeline 911 with your host, Erica.
Hello.
I am your co host, Gary, and today we are going to be discussing how to go through the interview process and get it back on track when you quote unquote bomb it. Because I think that's a feeling that a lot of people have. We recently actually were emailed by a listener of the show who is going through this exact same process and felt that they had a very difficult interview in terms of their performance at it. So it's not an uncommon thing to happen. Everybody has bad interviews from time to
Mhm.
time. It's a skill set that really isn't practiced much. You usually just do
Mm.
it a few times and then you're done. So
Yeah.
how can you get better at it when it's something you might only do 3 or 4 or 5 times in your whole life?
I'm thinking about this after having read the email from our listener, and they were just so upset. And the more I thought about it, I don't. You can go on YouTube and you can look at videos, but I think my advice would be there are some core questions that typically get asked, right? And those are the ones like, tell us about yourself, which could be also looked at as an elevator pitch. Practice those. Practice answering a whole question. Because I think that's where a lot of people, having been on a panel myself and been a panelee before, or someone who's, had to respond to a panel, one of the hardest things I remember is for myself is answering the whole question. Because you get the question, right? And like, tell us about yourself. Well, they don't mean, usually, they don't mean start back from I was born in South Carolina in a shack in the middle of the woods, and I started doing this, that, and the other in kindergarten, and I learned to ride a bike when I was X, Y, and Z. What they really want to know is tell us about yourself as it relates to this job that you're trying to get. So
Right.
I'm a 20 plus year veteran of public safety. And in the course of my 20 plus years, I've worn this hat, this hat, that hat, these skills, these, these certain skills that I know. And I would answer that question as it relates to the job I'm trying to get. So if I'm going in to be strictly a 911 operator, I've spent 20 plus years in public safety, but 5 of those years or 4 of those years I spent as a 911 operator. And what that taught me was ba 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 ba. That's what they mean when they ask you, tell me about yourself. They don't want to know how many brothers and sisters you have.
Right. Yeah. And I think that it's always a challenge. Like it's something you want to practice at. For example, Erica and I both have many years of experience in emergency communications, dispatching, training. But even so, when we started this podcast, it was kind of stressful to
Hmm.
get in front of the microphone, even though we were talking about topics that we are very well familiar with and know a
Hmm.
lot about, and are both very capable at just kind of talking extemporaneously, if
Hmm.
need be. So it's because it was something new, something that we hadn't really done before, getting
Hmm.
behind a podcast microphone as opposed to like a dispatch radio microphone. And
Yeah.
that is a lot of challenge. So one thing you can do is practice it. They say practice makes perfect, right? So
True.
yeah, if you've got sort of a friend or someone that you could say, hey, can you run me through some interview questions and just see how it goes? That will really
Hmm.
go, I think, a long way to making you feel a lot more comfortable in the process of kind of doing that.
Yeah. And be prepared to tailor your answer to multiple questions. So you can come up with an answer of tell me about yourself, 20 plus years of experience in public safety. If you're interviewing for a 911 dispatcher and you know that that is all that it is, and I think we had a guest, not a guest, but a listener say, do your research. And this is very, very true. So knowing what kind of agency you're going to work for is key. Is it a one seat, two seat PSAP, or is it a big center like ours, where there are two disciplines under one roof? You have a 911 operator that's separate and a dispatcher that's separate. Do they wear all of the hats? Do they do everything? And if that's the case, then you can answer, tell me about yourself. Even if you don't have any of experience in public safety, you can say I worked at McDonald's. One of my first jobs was working at McDonald's, and what that taught me was being a team player. And by team player, I mean someone who was able to and willing to jump in at a moment's notice on any task or any station. You had a fry person. I don't care what it is. Talk about what you're able to bring to the table when they ask you to tell us about yourself. That is what they mean. But part of that is knowing where you're going to interview. Because having no idea if you're talking about a one seat, two seat, three seat PSAP or a big old center, you need to know that so you can tailor your answer and answer it or practice answering that depending on how many places you've applied. If you've applied at three of them and they're completely different, have an answer for or have an answer that is that makes sense depending on who it is you're sitting in front of. Does it? Because I think I just kind of went all over the place, but I want to make sure that it at the end that answer made sense.
Right. Yeah, I know. And the advantage you have when applying for, dispatch centers or 911 centers is you can get a lot of information just as the public on that business. So you can find out how many 911 calls they take, how many, police, fire, EMS calls they respond to.
Hmm.
Most of the time, you can even do a ride along with them and
Yes.
maybe come in and sit in the center and kind of see how that's going, which will
Hmm.
help give you as much preparation on the front end as you can when moving into a new career field. Because as you were saying, Erica, like you may have been a fry cook at McDonald's, but you're not going to be flipping burgers. But what are the transferable skills that you got from your job at McDonald's? I learned
Hmm.
how to show up on time. I learned how to
Hmm.
interact with the customers when I was taking their cash. There's a
Hmm.
lot of skills that you're going to be getting that you've gotten throughout your career, even if you
Hmm.
just served a bunch of, teenage jobs or entry level jobs, that you can always find a way to transfer what you've learned over to a public safety setting.
Absolutely. And we just had a guest, Luanda Felder was one of those. I mean, she went from being a library worker primarily, 20 plus years, and she said it beautifully. It was customer service. It was in the front facing, in front of the customer, but now we do the same thing. It's just dealing with life and death. However, those skills are absolutely transferable. And that brings me to another point. Know what those are. Know what those skills are. And if you don't know, ask someone.
Yeah.
What are the transferable skills? You should be able to answer what that is because what you're really doing is selling yourself to this panel. Why should we take, especially if it's entry level, right? You don't have any experience to draw on. Like Gary and I, if we went and applied someplace, we might be considered overqualified because we're old goats at this job. But But one thing we could certainly do is speak to what the transferable skills are from here to there. And you have to know what those are in order to speak to them.
Hmm. Yeah, and so you can do all that kind of prep work to lay a good foundation for a lot of the questions that are going to come in, but you're also going to you'll probably get questions that you're not going to really be able to prepare ahead of time. So if you've never done, emergency response work before, and you come in and they say, "Hey, okay, you take a call for a bad car wreck on the highway, what are you going to do?" You're not going to have the knowledge of like the exact protocols of that center. I mean, unless you did some sit-alongs with the dispatchers
Hmm.
and call takers. But think about like logically, what are the things that would need to happen? I need to get police out there to make sure nobody else gets run over. I need to get
Hmm.
EMS and fire out there to provide life-saving aid, jaws of life, what
Hmm.
have you. And
Hmm.
that sort of critical thinking process is really a huge portion of what the panel is going to be looking for, because there's not there's a lot of gray area. Like we in all processes we try and make everything as black and white as possible, but you can't you can't write a policy for everything, nor would anybody ever want to work in a place that had a policy for everything.
Oh, I'm exhausted just thinking about it. Yeah.
So, so if you can demonstrate, hey, I may not know exactly, what needs to happen here, but this is my thought process for why. I'm going to start an ambulance because I know somebody may be injured and I want them
Hmm.
to receive medical aid. I'm going to start, the fire trucks because there may be a chemical spill from the collision.
Hmm.
I'm going to start blah,
The
blah, blah.
gas or oil on the roadway, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is an answer that a panel can really get behind, because that shows you're thinking about the question, the scenario, and what
Hmm.
the job is actually entailing of
Yeah.
getting aid to people that need it.
And and as you were talking about that, I was thinking, don't go in trying to answer the question as if you already know. Does that make sense? So it is okay to say, well, as you know, I've never done this kind of work before, but just thinking about it in terms of having either been in or seen a crash before, the things that I saw were EMS and fire and PD. So, I would get those guys started. Now, the order I'm not sure of, but I've been in crashes, unfortunately, and I've seen crashes on the highway, and these are the guys that showed up. So I'm sure you'll be happy to teach me exactly how to get that done. But off the top of my head, I would think that these are the things that would be necessary. And it is okay to have, it's okay to have a conversation, right? Don't make it too casual, but I really have had interviews in, matter of fact, fun fact, when I came back to work for Austin 911 after my time in Denver, guess who was on my interview panel? Gary. And I had never met him before, but I talked to him like a person.
That's
It
true.
is okay because the people on the interview panel, wait for it, shocked, amazed, and surprised people. Just talk to them. Obviously, don't lean back in your chair like you got, not a care in the world, but it is okay to say, hmm, I I remember having been in a crash or was involved in a crash with my cousin who was driving and should never have been driving, but no, don't do that. But speak to your life experience. It is okay to say in a very conversational way, this is what I think.
Mhm.
It's okay to ask for a moment. You know what? Can I have a second to think about that? A few things are going through my mind, but I just need one moment to kind of,
Yeah.
and then answer.
Yeah, because I think uh, one of the big issues that a lot of people have with interviews of any type is they give too much too much of the power to the interviewer, the panel. Whereas really this is as you said, it's a conversation,
Hmm.
because the interviewer wants to hire a good employee that will work well, work out for their organization, whatever that is. They're going to pay you money to do that. So that's your
Mhm.
incentive for being in the chair. But it's not a one-way street where the interviewer has
Mm-mm.
all the power.
Mm-mm.
You're interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you. So
Yeah,
don't feel don't feel like that power dynamic is so unequal, because
agreed.
you do want the job. And hopefully if you're going into the public safety, you're part of that want is because you want to help people and help your community, keep everybody safe. um, but nobody would do this without a paycheck. So that's your motivation for being there. And
Sure.
they're there because they need a butt in a seat, to keep
And it's a
everything
real
moving.
need.
Yeah.
It's a real need. Think about this. And I love the way you put that because it's true. There is a real need. They don't, in public safety, especially government, they don't interview just willy-nilly. They don't hire more than they need. If they're hiring and if they're interviewing to hire, that there is a but that is absent from said seat, which oftentimes means overtime. And because we are not for profit, that means that we're budgeted only so many overtime dollars. And when we start going over that, that's a problem. So believe me, they want to hire you. They hope you come in there and kill it. They really do. I've been on panels where I'm like so hopeful that everybody that we're looking at just comes in and nails it and makes my job that much harder. So behind the curtain moment, they're as motivated to hire as you are to be hired. So Gary's 100% right. It's not so one-sided that they hold all the power and they're just looking to axe people out of the process. Not at all. So you don't have to be perfect, but you should go in with some confidence that this is a two-way interview.
Mhm. Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask them questions. Have confidence in yourself, what you're bringing to the table, even if you don't have any prior experience. In law enforcement or medical or fire or anything like that. You do, like as Erica had said earlier, you've got experience. I was a fry cook, so I know how to show up on time. I know how to treat
Hmm.
customers. I know how to
Hmm.
organize. You've got a lot of skills that are fundamental to being successful and whatever that organization needs. So ask them questions. What kind of retirement system does this have?
Hmm.
What are the expectations for overtime every
Hmm.
week? Ask them questions, because you have just as much say and power in this as the interview panel does. So
Agree.
don't feel like they're this, like a judge looking down at you from the bench. You guys should be on a level playing field, because you're going to be giving,
Yeah,
uh, just as much as you're getting,
it's
ideally.
true. And you have, at the end of the day, I don't know if the right is the right word to use, but you deserve to know as much about them as they're asking of you to make an informed decision about whether or not you're going to go work there. And I get it. If you are unemployed, you're just looking for, obviously you can go get any job, but nobody goes looking for this process just because they need a job in a hurry. That's not at all going to happen, because there's just too much involved. But knowing your value as someone who can contribute to the overall mission. So here's the question: why do you want to be a dispatcher? Because I want to help people. That's great. Help them how?
Yeah.
I believe that I bring to you help them how, right? By sending fire, police, and yeah, but I'm going to teach you that. So tell me why you want to do this. We had one person write in, I've always wanted to do this. I've always been interested in it. What I would say to add to that is yes, tell them that you've always been interested in it. I saw a segment on the news not too long ago about how the industry is so shorthanded. And I feel like I could be a stable person in this industry. I enjoy helping people, but I've never had an opportunity to help on this level, and I believe it would be an amazing challenge. I believe it will be fulfilling, though I know it will be there's probably going to be some. now I wouldn't say trauma, but there are going to be challenges associated with it. Even though I know it never closes, it's nights, weekends, holidays, and sometimes overtime, and maybe not even overtime when I'm really looking for overtime. But I think it would be worth it to give back to my community in this way. Or if you've ever been on where you've had police or EMS or fire come to your home, you can say, you know what, they were so amazing, and I want to be a part of that in some way. I may not be able to be in the field, but I feel I can add something to this organization or something like that. Obviously, you would tailor your response and practice it so that it would be nice and smooth. But you can say things like that.
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah. And, just don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't put on any airs or anything. Just talk how you would normally conversate with people. I mean, you want to do it, of course, in a respectful manner,
Sure.
but don't pretend to be somebody you're not. Um,
Hmm.
as you were talking about that, it made me think about one question that we used to have on our interview questions, which was, tell us about a time you disagreed with somebody at work and how you resolved it. And I always had wanted somebody that was being interviewed to, at the end, ask us that question. What do you guys do when you guys have disagreements about policies and procedures, and how do you guys resolve it? Or somebody, because
Hmm.
that might be interesting for people to know, like how those kind of things get handled. So don't be afraid to flip the script a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it's not to be uh, demanding or difficult, but you are going to be investing a huge portion of your life into this organization if you choose to go down, this road and get hired. So
Hmm.
you want to make sure that you know who you're getting in, well,
In
involved
bed
with.
with, you can go ahead and
Yeah,
say it. In bed
yeah.
with, yeah,
Who you're going
yeah,
to be getting in bed with.
because they're going to be, no matter what the training is or how long it is, we know it's going to be more than a week. So, and it might be months. It depends on, what kind of agency it is. So you have every right to ask them, I saw on your website that, it's several months. Is there any flexibility with that? What are the odds of me ending up on this shift versus that shift so I can kind of plan my life around the possibility of working here? There's not a thing in the world wrong with any of those questions. They're intelligent questions because, and to me, if I got that question from someone, I would think, oh, okay, they're really thinking this through. They know we're a 24-hour organization and they can be placed anywhere. They're trying to get their support network ready so that they don't have to drop out of the process because they had no earthly idea that it might be nights or it might be, weekends when they have maybe a church organization that they are heavily involved with that will not allow them to work on Sundays. This is kind of the thing they need to know.
Yeah.
And I would count them very responsible for asking the question, especially in a high stakes situation like that. So it shows maturity and it shows forethought and it shows planning. Another question that people bomb all the time, and I don't know if we talked about this the last time, but I feel like it bears bringing up again, is your weaknesses. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? My weakness is I care too much. Don't say that. Don't say that. I care too much. There's no such thing.
I'm too hard a worker. I'm just too organized.
That doesn't make any sense because first of all, as a panel person, you see my face right now? For those of you on the listening, just imagine whatever face you want to put with that, nobody's buying that. So, one of my weaknesses is I am not a fan of administrative tasks when it comes to being a supervisor. You want me to write stuff? Hate it. Hate it with a stats with an absolute burning passion. Do I hate it? How would I answer that question? I One of my weaknesses is I am not really known to be a numbers person. What I have done to conquer this or get better at it is I've taken some classes on, learning how to run numbers and understand numbers and percentages and staffing issues. Typically, I'm more of a fan of the getting in the middle of it and mingling with the people, but I realize that administrative work is part of being a supervisor, so I have to do it. So my goal is to manage my time and seek out whatever help I can from my peers, classes even, to make myself better at it. So, and I realize I'm just kind of, this is not, my answer would be smoother and more prepared in a real interview scenario. But if you notice, I answered the question with, yes, I do have something that would be considered a weakness, but I didn't say that it was something that is just a weakness of mine, deal with it. No, here's a thing that I'm not that great at, and here are steps that I take or a plan in place to do better at it should administrative work be a part of your organization, the organization that I'm interviewing with. You have to own your weakness, but here's what I'm doing to make sure that it's not a detriment to my employment here. As far as your strengths, then don't be cocky. One of my strengths is relationships. I'm good at building relationships in a workplace, even with people that directly report to me. Typically, so much so that even when I have to deliver difficult news or bring down the disciplinarian side of my personality or my job, they can take it because I spend time building trust and building relationships, and it comes naturally to me. That's not bragging. That's not arrogance. That's just the truth. And they can do with that information what they want in an interview situation. I'm just the best supervisor you will ever have in your organization because I am the bee's knees and I'm going to get the job done. That tells me nothing.
Right. And also as a panelist, if if you hear somebody say, "Hey, this is my weakness," um, that says to me because everybody has weaknesses and strengths. So if you get some sort of a blasé answer like I'm just too hard a worker or I just am too dedicated, that says to me either A, they're being untruthful, or
Mm-hmm.
B, they're not, they've got their blinders on and they can't see where they're deficient at, which
Mm-hmm.
is going to make it much harder to mold them into the best employee that they can be. So by acknowledging that, like, it helps uh, you as the panel to see, okay, this is somebody, this is where their weakness is. And, for Erica's answer, she's like, I took classes on it. I, seek out help. So she's got an active solution for her
Mm-hmm.
weakness. So
Mm-hmm.
that is really something that you want to see on the panel, I think. And
Yeah.
it's an answer that shows personal accountability and growth
Mm-hmm.
as the person interviewing on the panel. So
Yeah.
it's a real win-win situation. Again, I would always think it would be funny if somebody was like, "What is your organization's greatest strength and weakness? What do you guys have the most trouble with?" Um, just
That's
just a
Gary's
fantasy.
interest. That would be Gary being so Gary. And so I'm not sure I would do that.
Maybe not, but it would sure be a nice twist on the old interview panel.
Yeah,
But
you would need to be, I don't even know how confident you would need to be to do that.
that that would
Not that one.
but if you are in the middle of an interview and you're like, crap, I have not been answering these questions well. I've not been doing very well on this. I feel like it's really bad. Is there anything you can do to kind of salvage it midway through? Like, can you pull the plane up before it hits the ocean? And I think that there is, because acknowledging
Mhm.
that in your head, ooh, this isn't going well. I'm not answering these questions the way I need to be. I'm way too nervous. I'm just talking too fast. You can take a pause, breathe, and kind of get back on track. And if you
Mhm.
want to, you can go back and re-answer those questions that you may have not done a good job on. It's
Yes.
not illegal to do that.
Nope. Nope. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, you know, there's no rule that says you can't. You know what? Can I have just 1 second? Can I go back to that question number three, or what, the one about the thing and the thing? I can't imagine that that would be a problem,
No.
because I would be like, oh, okay. You thought of something that you didn't say the first time, or, or you could even go so far as to say, you know what, I'm not sure I gave you the best answer I could possibly give you to question number whatever, if you remember the question, or at least something about the question that they can go back and reference. I'd like to start over and answer that question again, if I might. Or if you'd rather me finish up and then maybe we can go back to that question. It's something like that. I cannot imagine that that would be a problem. Because again, it shows that you are thinking and that you're realizing, oh, I wish I had said this, or I wish I had said that. You could also ask for a copy of the questions when you first come in.
Yeah. A lot of times
Yes.
they'll be provided
Mhm.
to you.
Yeah, a
And
lot of times, and if there aren't, you can say, um, is it possible that I can have a copy of the questions just so I can reference them and I can keep, so I can keep up with what I've said and what I haven't said? And I think it would be a red flag for you as an interviewee if they refuse.
mhm, yeah. And uh, just like the interviewers have some red flags for their people they're interviewing, as the interviewee, you should also be paying attention to those. So if they're like, no, we can't go back and re-answer an old question. No, you can't have a copy of the questions. Now, you might not get to take the copy with you because they
Agreed.
may because they
Sure.
may need to keep it private until the round of interviews is done. But
Of course.
kind of paying attention to things that are red flags, because ultimately, even though being a call taker or dispatcher, or medic on the phone or a firefighter is a professional job, this is still an entry level job. So
Hmm.
if the organization you're trying to get on with is so concerned with, like, we can't go back in the process, it sounds like that's a really, really inflexible organization, and that may
Agreed.
not be a good fit. That sounds like that organization would. There's probably a reason they have a massive employee shortage if that's the case.
No kidding. And if you have, and I would say, because I'm sure we're getting close to time here, but I would say that is absolutely true. Red flags go both ways. If they are so inflexible that they would not allow you to see the questions, not ahead of time, but in the process, and leave it there, for obvious reasons, right? They don't want you to post them anyplace, but just so that you can keep track, and if you need to reference a question back again, that you know exactly where everybody's on the same page. If they're unwilling to do that, then how flexible will they be during the training, which we know will not be easy? Would you have another opportunity to tackle a quiz or a test that you don't do well on, or is it one time and then there's just one strike, you're out? So, and if that's the case, I'm not sure that's the place you want to be, because if you've listened to the show enough, you know that the training is long, it is difficult, it is stressful, but most people require extensions and go backs and different things like that, or else no, hardly anybody would make it through. So, red flag, to be sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I guess my closing thought would just be, and I think I've said it before, but if you approach an interview as more of almost a date, like if you think about if you go on a date with somebody, a first date, are you going to sit down and pull out a list of 100 questions and then start asking them each and every question in a very formal kind of setting? No, unless you're a crazy person
Hope
like
not.
me.
Yeah.
What's your FICO score? What kind of lunches do you like to pack? These are not. Think about it more like it's a conversation, as you said, Erica, and it's between equal people.
Yes.
You're looking for the job, they're looking for the employee. And how can we
Right.
take these two things and mash them together? And it's all about having that conversation so that both parties are clear on what to expect. They're kind of learning about you as a person and employee. You're learning about them as an employer and an
Hmm.
organization. And it's to clear up any of those red flags. Make sure you avoid that because you don't want to go work at a toxic or bad place, and
Hmm.
they don't want to hire an employee that's going to be stealing from the cookie jar. So filtering those kind of things out is the process. But it's think of it, you two are equals in the process. It's
Hmm.
not they have all the power and you have none. So if
Right.
that could hopefully give anybody who's going to be going through this process a little bit of comfort in their mind, then I would say look at it like that.
And I just thought of this. If you don't do well in an interview, that doesn't often, I can't imagine how that would disqualify you from applying again and doing better the next time around.
Yeah.
It, it happens where you apply for a job and someone beats you out so you don't get the interview, right? Or you interview and it just did not go well. Apply again because your qualifications are still the same. Your minimum quals, right? The minimum qualifications that it takes to even get to the interview process has not changed. You just did not do well in the interview. I can't imagine that interviewing not interviewing well is a disqualifier. That doesn't make any sense because
Yeah.
people have applied two or three times, interviewed two or three times, and got beaten out by other people, even though they answered everything just fine. So try again. It's not the end of the world if you have to go back again. It's you would rather nail it the first time, of course, but try again.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, unless your interview is just like ridiculously comically bad where chairs are being thrown around or something like that, then you may be on the blacklist. But
You
if you
might,
just if you just didn't score the highest, go back. It's okay.
yeah. And even if after the whole thing is done and you find out that you didn't get it, it might be possible to reach out to the hiring manager or someone like that and ask for some feedback.
Hmm.
What was the thing? Because we know it wasn't whether you could type enough. We know it wasn't your background or whatever it takes to get through the door and get to the interview. We know that is not what happened. If it just did not go well, it might not hurt to ask. You may be surprised at the answer that you get.
Right.
They may
Yeah.
say, "Well, you didn't answer the questions at all."
Yeah. When you're at the interview process, hiring managers usually really love to give feedback on
Yes.
what worked, what didn't work, and that's how you
Hmm.
can kind of refine your work on it for the next time that you go either there or to another place.
Yeah.
But uh, you won't always. In fact, most things in life you're going to fail in the first time,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's okay. Life isn't about succeeding 100% of the time every time. It's about picking yourself up and getting back on that horse when you do fall off. So
Yeah.
don't let that crush your spirit.
Yeah. Agreed. Well said.
Well, I hope we haven't crushed your spirits today if you're interested in applying for a position as a 911 call taker or dispatcher. And we very much appreciate all of you who have taken that plunge to go do that. And especially if you've contacted us about that, we do enjoy hearing how your progress is going and seeing it.
Yes.
We're always cheering you on because we do need more good people in the profession. That is for
Agreed.
sure.
Agreed.
And if you enjoyed what you heard, please make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions, or if you're going through your own struggles or interview prep, you can always shoot us an email at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. From all of us at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary,
I'm Erica.
and we will see you next time.
Thank you for watching. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911, copyright 2026. Until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.